About who fights harder, they're also about who is better prepared. Across the world, from Ukraine to West Asia and even in India's own skirmishes with Pakistan, there's a clear message for military planners. You cannot rely on others to arm you. And India understands this well. This week, it has tested a smarter air defense system, fired nuclear-capable missiles and moved to build cutting-edge weapons on its own soil. It's a bold push towards self-reliance and a sign that India is gearing up for the battles of tomorrow. Tonight, we bring you the details of the shift. Also, India registers a win in its war against terrorism. The US has designated TRF as a terrorist group. In Brazil, Lula's ratings soar as he stands up to Trump. He says he won't take orders from gringo Trump. Meanwhile, the US president is caught in the Epstein mess. A new report talks about Trump's letter to Epstein. Is China's Belt and Road making a comeback? In Japan, elections are coming up and a far-right Trumpian party is shaking things up. In Pakistan, they're grappling with intense rain and floods. In the UK, Prime Minister Keir Starmer is cozying up to Europe. Is he planning to reverse Brexit? And finally, we'll answer an age-old question. Do the French really not work, or is it a misconception? All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Fresh violence erupts in Syria's Druze heartland as armed tribes supported by the government clash with Druze fighters. Just a day ago, the army had withdrawn from the area. The retreat came after Israeli bombardment and diplomatic pressure. Nearly 600 people have been killed in the violence which began on Sunday. In India, more than 80 schools across Delhi and Bengaluru received bomb threats. The email threats turned out to be hoaxes, but it caused widespread panic and disruption as bomb disposal squads rushed to the sites. This is the fourth consecutive day that schools across the national capital have received bomb threats. Myanmar's junta offers cash rewards to anti-coup defectors. The move comes ahead of an election scheduled for later this year. The Southeast Asian country has been battling a civil war since a coup in 2021. The junta has touted the polls as a pathway to peace, but opposition groups and international observers fear it will be a sham. Germany deports more than 80 convicted Afghan men to their Taliban-ruled homeland. This is only the second time that Germany has done so since the Taliban returned to power in Afghanistan in 2021. But it is the first such move under Chancellor Friedrich Merz, who wants to adopt a hard line on immigration. And North Korea bans foreigners from a newly opened beach resort. This comes just days after Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov visited the area. The resort is North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's pet project. Earlier this month, it opened to domestic visitors amid great fanfare. You cannot fight long wars with borrowed armor. Look at the battlefield in Ukraine, the endless conflicts in West Asia, even the recent clash between India and Pakistan. Three different examples, one lesson. When you build your own weapons, you have the upper hand on the battlefield. And that's exactly what India is focusing on right now. India is testing a wide range of new weapons, weapons that are made in India. This week alone, India has tested a new air defense system and nuclear-capable ballistic missiles. It has pushed a proposal to build sophisticated defense technologies like jet engines and new weapons like rifles, all within a week. And it shows how serious New Delhi is and how urgently it is pursuing the target of Make in India in defense. Tonight, we'll bring you up to speed with these latest moves, starting with the air defense system. 2 days back, the Indian Army conducted a weapons test, an air defense system called the Akash Prime. This is an upgraded version of the Akash system, the one that was used against Pakistan during Operation Sindoor in the month of May. It was the Akash system that successfully defended the Indian skies against Pakistani projectiles. It shot down multiple Pakistani drones. India has now made improvements to this same system, designed and produced by two players, the DRDO, the Defense Research and Development Organization, and Bharat Dynamics, which is a state manufacturer. So how is Akash Prime different from the original Akash system? For one, the missiles are smarter. They can chase flying targets more reliably, even when the weather or the landscape is not favorable. During this test, the one that was conducted this week, the Akash Prime shot down 2 high-speed targets. Take a look at this. So the weapon is effective. It took out targets with precision. The Indian Army has given it the stamp of approval. They will induct the Akash Prime soon. And this was the first test of the week. Yesterday, India conducted another test. 2 missiles were test fired from Odisha, the Prithvi-2 and the Agni-1. These are short-range missiles. The Prithvi-2 can travel up to 250 kilometers. The Agni-1 has a range of 700 to 900 kilometers. Both weapons are nuclear capable, meaning they can carry nuclear warheads. They can be used along India's borders on both the fronts, China and Pakistan. Also, these are not new missiles. They're part of India's nuclear deterrence. But by testing these missiles now, New Delhi is sending a signal that India's defenses remain strong and its defense forces are on guard. Next, we come to the upgrades. India is deepening ties with reliable partners like France. Reports say the Defense Ministry has made a recommendation to collaborate with a French company called Safran. This is for the production of jet engines. India is looking for partners for the AMCA project. AMCA is India's 5th generation fighter jet project. AMCA stands for Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft. And the French player Safran could make engines for AMCA. It is offering India a complete tech transfer. And this is very significant, the tech transfer. Remember, jet engine is a difficult technology to master. So India remains dependent on imports here. And we've tried to change that with partnerships. But the results have been mixed. India signed a deal with GE, the American jet manufacturer, a few years ago. This was to get engines for the homemade Tejas jets. But the deliveries were delayed by 2 years. The engines began arriving only this week, and this delay, a 2-year delay, has hurt India's own timelines. So for future projects, New Delhi is keeping its options open. And Russia is also in the mix, but for a different project. New Delhi and Moscow are holding talks. India is pitching for joint manufacturing for a wide range of Kalashnikov rifles. India wants these guns for its forces. India also wants to export these guns. So again, tech transfer is part of these conversations. Now, if you put all of this together, you can see how India's defense modernization is gathering pace. It has become a top priority after the latest conflict with Pakistan. India won that fight hands down. But India was also quick to see how warfare is changing. Today's battlefield demands everything, from large weapons like fighter jets to smart weapons like drones. You need all of it, and you cannot amass an arsenal like this if you solely depend on imports. You have to make them at home. You have to make them in India, and that's what we're doing. India has scored a big win against terror, not on the battlefield, but in the battle of global opinion. And the target? The Resistance Front, or the TRF, the same group that was behind the Pahalgam attack. The United States of America has decided to designate the TRF. Basically, it has been declared a terrorist group in the US, and this is a big deal for India. We ran a global campaign against the TRF and finally it seems to be working. The question is, how will this designation weaken the group? And how does it help India's anti-terror fight? Well, the move was announced by the US State Department. They designated TRF as two threats, as a foreign terrorist organization and as a specially designated global terrorist. Of course, India has welcomed this move. Let me quote from what New Delhi has said. The designation of TRF is a timely and important step reflecting the deep cooperation between India and the United States on counter-terrorism. We acknowledge and appreciate the leadership of Secretary of State Marco Rubio in this regard. Let's look at the impact of this move. Once a group is designated as terrorist, all contacts become illegal. You cannot fund them, you cannot help them, you cannot advise them, you cannot associate with them. And if you do, it's a crime under American law. That is the legal impact of this move. What about the political impact? Well, there are three. Number one, this is an acknowledgement of India's position. Remember, TRF initially claimed credit for the Pahalgam attack, but later they backtracked. They said, we did not do it. Even Pakistan said that TRF was not behind the attack in Pahalgam. At the United Nations Security Council, Pakistan pushed that very same narrative. They managed to drop any mention of TRF. But the US is not buying that. Again, look at their statement, and I'm quoting. TRF, a Lashkar-e-Taiba front and proxy, claimed responsibility for the April 22, 2025 Pahalgam attack, which killed 26 civilians. This was the deadliest attack on civilians in India since the 2008 Mumbai attacks conducted by the LET. This is the US statement, and this is significant. Pakistan denied links between the Lashkar-e-Taiba and the TRF. Their deputy prime minister called TRF freedom fighters. Yet the US has linked them and designated them. Meaning, Washington buys India's version, not Pakistan's. And of course, Islamabad is not happy about this. They have reacted to the US decision. Listen closely to what the Pakistanis have said, and I'm quoting, while the issue under consideration pertains to US domestic laws, India has a track record of exploiting such designations to push anti-Pakistan propaganda. Let me correct that for them. India is not pushing propaganda. India is exposing Pakistan's terror links, which is a second political impact. US designations have a cascading impact. Their allies tend to follow them. So we can now put pressure on the likes of Europe, Japan and Australia. We can tell them, look, the Americans have designated TRF, so you should do the same. And chances are they will listen. Which brings us to the final political impact. It's a starting point in our global campaign against Pakistan. India is looking to corner Pakistan at the FATF. That's the Financial Action Task Force. Its job is to crack down on terror financing. Again, this is where Western influence is key. India alone cannot get Pakistan blacklisted. We need support from our Western partners. Same at the United Nations Security Council. Pakistan is a non-permanent member at the UN Security Council right now. In fact, this month, Pakistan is the president of the UN Security Council. It is also heading key anti-terror bodies. So India needs all the diplomatic support it can get. And support begins with recognition, with accepting who is the problem. Also, the timing of this designation is important. Our ties with the US have hit a rough patch, mainly thanks to Donald Trump. He keeps equating India and Pakistan. He also keeps claiming credit for the recent ceasefire. Amid that setback, this designation gives us hope. Yes, the US may have a strategic relationship with Pakistan, but they're not ignoring terror concerns completely. Of course, now the ball is in India's court. We have something to run with now. Our immediate priority is to catch the Pahalgam attackers. It's been almost 3 months now. We still haven't been able to find the attackers, so that is priority number one. After that, we must expand this diplomatic campaign. Because one designation is not going to be enough. The end goal is to target and isolate Pakistan, and that's still work in progress. Trump's tariffs are back. He's swinging them around like a hammer in a china shop, impacting any and every country. Nations are left scrambling. Some are bowing, others are talking concessions, but there's one nation that is not folding, and that is Brazil. Brazil's president, Lula da Silva, is neither bowing nor bargaining. Instead, he is calling out Trump's actions.
We don't want an emperor. Our countries are sovereign. If Trump issues tariffs, other countries have the right to do the same. There is the reciprocity law. I think it's not responsible for a president from a country like the US to threaten the world with tariffs on social media. Honestly, there are other forums for the president of a country the size of the United States to talk to other countries.
First, Lula called Trump an emperor. He said Trump was not elected to rule the world. Then he called him a gringo. In Brazil, the word means foreigner. President Lula said he was not ready to take orders from a gringo.
A gringo is not going to give orders to this president of the republic.
So clearly, the Brazilian president is not mincing his words. But where did this spat begin? Like most Trump squabbles of late, it began with a letter, a tariff letter. Last week, Donald Trump slapped additional tariffs on Brazil, 50% tariffs. Officially, the Trump administration claims it is about unfair trade practices, about an anti-US bias. But unofficially, it's about Jair Bolsonaro, the former president of Brazil. Trump and Bolsonaro are ideological soulmates. They're both climate skeptics. They both downplayed the pandemic. Both are obsessed with crowd sizes. In fact, during Bolsonaro's presidency, he was a frequent guest at the Mar-a-Lago resort of Donald Trump. He often echoed Trump's rhetoric. He was called the Brazilian Trump. But now Bolsonaro has been charged with leading a coup, and that trial is underway as we speak. Brazil's chief prosecutor says that he tried to incite an insurrection. Bolsonaro calls it a witch hunt. And his friend Trump agrees. Trump believes this is all politically motivated. So this fight with Brazil is less about trade and more about Jair Bolsonaro. And Trump even gave that away in a recent letter. He called the former Brazilian president a hero. Also, and I'm quoting, a victim of an unjust system. Which frankly sounds a lot like how Trump describes himself. Maybe that's why he identifies with Bolsonaro. But beyond Bolsonaro, there's more to this fight between Trump and Lula. For starters, Brazil is part of BRICS, and Trump hates this grouping. He has accused BRICS members of anti-Western priorities. That's what he said, anti-Western priorities. He sees the BRICS as a threat, so he's warned BRICS countries like Brazil, to pick a side. And then there's the issue of tech regulation. President Lula has been cracking down on US digital giants, the likes of Google and Meta. Brazil accuses them of spreading fake news. It believes big tech needs a leash. But in Trump's view, this is censorship. On Tuesday, the US even launched an investigation into it. It cites, and I'm quoting, unfair trade practices as a reason. But Lula is having none of it.
The defense of sovereignty also applies to foreign digital platforms. In Brazil, in order to operate in our country, all national and foreign companies are obliged to comply with the rules.
And here's the irony of the situation. The US actually runs a trade surplus with Brazil. In 2024, America exported more to Brazil than it imported. The main exports include things like aircraft, electrical equipment, and industrial machinery. So if Brazil decides to hit back, it won't be symbolic. Those tariffs will really hurt the US. But then again, when has economic self-harm stopped Donald Trump? So where does the situation stand right now? Lula says he's still open to negotiation, but this spat is helping him politically. His approval ratings have gone up from 40% in May to 43% this month.
Brazil has always been open to dialogue. We held more than 10 meetings with the US government, and on May 16th, we sent them a proposal for negotiation and waited for a response. What we got was unacceptable blackmail in the form of threats to Brazilian institutions and false information about trade between Brazil and the United States.
So here we are, Trump is throwing tariffs like he's still hosting The Apprentice, and Lula, he's not playing the role of a contestant. But this fight is bigger than these two men. It's about whether the global South can push back or whether they'll be punished for dissent. Lula sees a bully at his border and he's holding his ground. But how long can he do that? More importantly, what comes next? An economic standoff, a diplomatic meltdown? We don't know yet. For now, it's just another day of personal politics in the Trump era. Vantage continues after a short break.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
और आज उसकी सफलता पूरी दुनिया देख रही है। साथियों, बिहार के पास न सामर्थ्य की कमी है और न ही संसाधन की। आज बिहार के संसाधन बिहार की प्रगति का माध्यम बन रहे हैं। आप देखिए, एनडीए सरकार के प्रयासों के बाद से ही मखाना की कीमतें कितनी बढ़ी हैं, क्योंकि हमने यहां के मखाना किसानों को बड़े बाजार से जोड़ा। हम मखाना बोर्ड का गठन कर रहे हैं। यहां केला, लीची, मरचा चावल, कटारनी चावल, जर्दालू आम, मगही पान, अभी ऐसे कितने ही उत्पाद और हैं जो बिहार के किसानों को, बिहार के युवाओं को दुनिया भर के मार्केट से जोड़ेंगे। भाइयों बहनों, किसानों के उत्पाद और उनकी आय को बढ़ाना हमारी प्राथमिकता है। पीएम किसान सम्मान निधि योजना के तहत अब तक करीब 3.5 लाख करोड़ रुपया किसानों को दिए गए हैं। यहां अकेले मोतीहारी में ही 5 लाख से ज्यादा किसानों को 1,500 करोड़ रुपए से ज्यादा मिले हैं। साथियों, न हम नारों तक अटकते हैं, न हम वादों तक सिमटते हैं, हम तो काम करके दिखाते हैं। जब हम कहते हैं
Here's a strange fact about Donald Trump. The US president is an avid doodler. He loves doodling. And I'm not the one saying so. Trump mentioned it in his 2008 book. He wrote, and I quote, "It takes me a few minutes to draw something. In my case, it's usually a building or a cityscape of skyscrapers." In fact, his doodles have made it to charity auctions. One of them was even sold for nearly $30,000. A Trump doodle sold for $30,000. But why are we talking about the US president's drawing skills suddenly? It's because of a new Wall Street Journal report. According to this report, Trump wrote a letter to Jeffrey Epstein on his 50th birthday. And this letter included typewritten text along with the outline of a naked woman. And Trump even had some special words for him. He reportedly said, and I quote, "A pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret." The Wall Street Journal has leaked this letter. Trump has denied it, He says he does not draw pictures. He's even threatening to sue the Wall Street Journal. But why is this such a big deal? It's because of the man he wrote the letter to, Jeffrey Epstein. Here's a quick primer. In the 2000s, Epstein was a big name. No one knew what he really did, but everyone knew that he was wealthy. So they all wanted to be seen with him. On paper, Epstein was a financier, but behind the doors, he was a sexual predator. In the early 2010s, he was accused of sexually abusing underage girls. In July 2019, he was arrested in New Jersey. He was charged with sex trafficking. If convicted, he would spend 45 years in prison. But by August, Epstein was dead within a month of his arrest. He died by suicide in a Manhattan jail. But the case did not die with him. If anything, it snowballed. And how is Trump connected to all of this? Well, Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein were friends in the late 90s and early 2000s. They were seen partying together. They were photographed together multiple times. Trump flew on Epstein's private jet. Epstein was a regular at Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. In 2004, they fell out over a property dispute. Trump says they stopped talking after that. By 2019, Trump was calling Epstein a creep. He says he knew nothing about Epstein's activities. In 2024, Trump campaigned to release the Epstein files that included names of people linked to him, those who hung out with him regularly, and those who took part in sex trafficking activities. Apparently, all those names were in the Epstein files. And as a presidential candidate, Donald Trump promised to release those files. But now, as president, Trump says there is no such file, that it was all a hoax. There's no such list. And this has broken the MAGA-verse. It has left Trump supporters divided. You see, the Epstein case had become a holy grail for the MAGA. For them, Trump was the savior. He would expose the deep state. But Trump's U-turn has left them questioning everything. Many feel betrayed. Some are calling for transparency. Even die-hard Trump supporters are skeptical. Others, like Elon Musk, want the list out now. But Trump did not seem to care.
They're wasting their time with a guy who obviously had some very serious problems, who died 3-4 years ago. I'd rather talk about the success we have with the economy, the best we've ever had, and all of the things we've done, including in the Middle East. I mean, you see it. Instead, they want to talk about the Epstein hoax.
Attorney General Pam Bondi announced that the Epstein investigation is over, that there was no client list, no blackmail tapes, just a bunch of material on child sexual abuse. It was the ultimate anti-climax for MAGA. Trump asked his supporters to move on, but they were not convinced. They still called for the release of the list. In fact, 79% Americans want to see the documents. 75% of them are Republicans.
I don't understand it. Why they would be so interested. He's dead for a long time. He was never a big factor in terms of life. I don't understand what the interest or what the fascination is. I really don't. And the credible information has been given. It's pretty boring stuff. It's sordid, but it's boring. And I don't understand why it keeps going.
So the appeal of his supporters did not work. But now with the release of this letter, Trump is trying something else to calm his base. He has ordered the release of more court documents, but here's the catch. That requires court approval. It could take months. So will America ever get to see the full files? We say don't hold your breath for it. In Trump's words, may every day be another wonderful secret. But will this secret break his loyal base? We will have to wait and watch. Now let's talk about China. Xi Jinping's pet project is making a comeback. We're talking about the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative. China is back to building bridges, roads, railways and ports and ensnaring countries into debt. In fact, this year has been record-breaking. Chinese BRI investments have shot through the roof. We are only in the month of July And China has signed 176 new deals. These are deals worth $124 billion. 176 deals for just the first 6 months of the year. That's more than what they did in all of last year. That means the BRI has ballooned. The total value now is well above $1 trillion. That's what all the BRI contracts and investments are worth, $1 trillion US dollars. This includes construction contracts, which are valued at $775 billion, and non-financial investments worth more than $500 billion. These could be investments towards infrastructure. And who is the biggest recipient of these funds this year? It's Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan has received $23 billion in BRI investment. That's the highest for any BRI partner. This was followed by Thailand. They have received over $7 billion. Egypt comes third at $4.8 billion. And what about Pakistan? Did they see any surge in investment from China? Well, none at all. In fact, Beijing is cutting back from CPEC. CPEC is the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. CPEC was one of the largest and most high-profile BRI investments. Beijing committed more than $60 billion to it, but today CPEC is a laggard. China's rate of investment has fallen by 54%. So Pakistan is falling behind, and China is looking to woo new partners. Beijing calls this investment spurt a sign of strength. But is that really the case? China is spending money abroad while the cracks within its economy are widening. Their latest GDP numbers came out this week. China's growth rate stood well above 5%. These numbers are for the first quarter, that is, the last 3 months.
Gross domestic product grew by 5.4% year-on-year in the first quarter and grew by 5.2% year-on-year in the second quarter. On a quarter-on-quarter basis, GDP grew by 1.1% in the second quarter.
On first impressions, this seems like good growth. But the fact is, China's domestic economy is struggling. The property sector remains in an extended slump. Demand for new homes is still tepid. It has fallen below 5 million units a year. At its peak in 2017, 20 million new homes were being sold in China, but now that figure is less than 5 million. That's a drop of 75%. Plus, unemployment is rising, especially among the youth. Almost 15% of China's youth is jobless. There aren't enough new jobs being created. Deflation is another warning sign. Prices of goods are falling year on year. So consumers have postponed major purchases. They're holding off on spending because they expect the prices to fall further. And that may work for consumers to buy what they want for cheap. But for China's economy, it is a red flag. Falling consumption will impact their growth prospects. So there are clear challenges at home, serious ones. And yet Beijing continues to pour money into projects abroad. It is buying global influence using its checkbook in Asia, Africa, and beyond. It is prioritizing Xi Jinping's ambition over the people of China. The Communist Party would sell these investments as a win, to show that as the US recedes from the world stage, China is taking the role. Aren't ordinary Chinese citizens questioning this? If their country has the money, why is it not being spent on them? Why are they struggling as their government builds roads and airports in far-off lands? Perhaps they are asking questions, but we wouldn't know, because Chinese censors maintain a tight grip on dissent at home. China presents the BRI as a symbol of power, but the rest of the world sees it for what it is, a costly and dangerous distraction from its troubles at home. It's election season in Japan. The country will go to polls on Sunday. They will elect members to the upper house of parliament. And it's a big test for their prime minister, Shigeru Ishiba. Right now, his coalition has a majority in the upper house, but after the polls, they may not. They may lose that majority, and one reason for that is a new far-right political party, a Trumpian upstart. The party is called Sansedo. Their main campaign pitch is Japanese first. Sounds familiar? It should, because this is Donald Trump's slogan. The US president says America first, and this party says Japanese first. They are projected to win 15 to 20 seats in the upper house. That's out of 125 seats that are up for grabs. They may win 15 to 20. Again, this is familiar. Just look at far-right parties in Europe. They never win enough seats to form government, but they win enough to trouble the mainstream. And it's the same in Japan. The Sansedo party is nowhere close to power, but they're shaking Ishiba's chair. The question is how? This party is a classic 21st century creation. It was not born out of a movement. It was born on YouTube during the pandemic. They used to spread fake news about vaccines. They pushed conspiracy theories about a secret cartel of rich people, all classic far-right tropes. But their biggest strength is immigration. If it wasn't clear, they're against it. They're against immigration. The Sansedo talk about a silent invasion by migrants. They blame immigration for the rising inflation in their country. Now, to be clear, inflation is a problem in Japan. Their central bank has a target of 2% inflation, but the actual rate is 3.3%. And it has been above this target, the 2% target, for 39 months now. And food is the big problem. Rice prices have doubled since June last year. So the Japanese are feeling the pinch. Enter the Sansedo party. They have given the voters an easy villain to blame: immigrants. Just look at the numbers. There are 3.8 million immigrant residents in Japan. That's an all-time high, 3.8 million immigrants. But in terms of proportion, it's tiny. Migrants make up just 3% of their population. Compare that to the US, where the figure is more than 15%. So technically, immigration is not a problem in Japan. Just one difference though. Japan is not America. America has always been a melting pot country. Japan has always been more isolationist. They have never needed or welcomed immigrants. Which brings us to the politics. The Sansedo party has tapped into these sentiments. Their success has forced mainstream parties to do the same. Prime Minister Ishiba has set up a task force. It will investigate crimes committed by foreign nationals. And I know it's a bit odd. Why can't ordinary cops investigate these crimes? It's the same law, it's the same jurisdiction. So why do you need a different task force? Clearly for political appeal. To tap into the anger against foreigners. But the root of this anger is not actually migration. Many experts say it's over-tourism. Since the pandemic, the floodgates have opened. Some 21 million tourists visited Japan in the first half of 2025. Japan is a top tourist destination in Asia. Of course, this brings in a lot of money and foreign exchange, but some locals are not happy. Higher tourism tends to drive up inflation. It is also putting off the locals. And we saw an example of that earlier this year. Japanese officials blocked the view of Mount Fuji from a shop. It used to be a popular tourist spot. But officials boarded it up after complaints. So while inflation may be the top poll issue, the root concern is foreigners. And this new Sansedo party is cashing in. They have some 400,000 followers on YouTube. That's the highest for a Japanese party, also 3 times more than the ruling party. Of course, a higher following on social media does not guarantee success in elections. In many cases, it may also exaggerate a party's true popularity. Nonetheless, it will encourage Sansedo. They may make a splash this time. But can they do it consistently? That is the question. As for Prime Minister Ishiba, this is do or die. His coalition lost its majority in the lower house last year in fact, and this year, they lost local polls in Tokyo. For the first time ever, they lost elections in Tokyo. So another loss would pile the pressure on Ishiba. He may have no option but to resign. We'll be tracking the results closely. In Pakistan, torrential rain has triggered devastating floods destroying thousands of homes, submerging roads and killing scores of people. The rains began in late June. Since then, at least 180 people have died and the death toll is only mounting. In fact, at least 63 people died yesterday alone. It's becoming a struggle to survive, and the anger is palpable because Pakistan is vulnerable to deadly floods. So why was the government unprepared? Why is it unprepared every monsoon? Why does the same story repeat every year? Here's a report.
Thousands of homes collapsed, roads damaged, livelihoods destroyed, and innocent lives lost. Since late June, heavy monsoon rains have battered Pakistan, especially the Punjab province. Torrential rains have led to relentless floods and swept through populous localities, claiming the lives of at least 180 people across the nation. Almost half of this death toll is children. In Rawalpindi and the nearby capital Islamabad, multiple areas recorded more than 100 millimeters rainfall yesterday. At least 63 people died on Thursday alone. Most of the victims were crushed by collapsing buildings. The rest either drowned or were electrocuted. Amid the loss and grief, people's anger is palpable.
डब्बों से पानी वगैरह बाहर लगा दिया जाता है, ना हो तो अपनी फैमिली को हम दूसरी जगह पे शिफ्ट कर देते हैं क्योंकि हमारी जानों को ख़तरा होता है। हुक्मरानों ने तो कुछ भी नहीं करना है, इन्होंने वीगो डालों में फिरना है, आना है, हाज़िरी लगानी है, चले जाना है। पर हम जो गरीब अवाम है इसने पिस गई है और अभी यानी कि जैसे आप देख रहे हैं कि हालात बहुत ख़राब होते हैं हर साल की तरह इस साल भी।
After all, Pakistan knows this story all too well. This is a country of more than 230 million people, and it is battered by two powerful weather systems, one that causes excessive heat and drought, and another that unleashes brutal monsoon rains, which causes deadly flooding. Pakistan experienced the worst floods in its history in 2022. A third of the country was submerged from heavy rains. Floodwater washed away homes, leaving tens of thousands without food or clean water, and killing more than 1,000 people. This year's downpour has revived the memories, while the government scrambles to cope. On Thursday, an emergency had been declared in a number of areas. The city of Rawalpindi declared a public holiday to keep people at home. And the military has been deployed to help with rescue. People have been asked to evacuate. A handful of relief camps have been set up, providing food, water, and shelter to the affected. But the worst is far from over. More heavy rain is expected.
अगले 3 रोज तक तो ये एक्टिविटी मामूल के मुताबिक होगी, कोई ज़्यादा तूफ़ानी बारिशें नहीं होंगी, लेकिन हम अगले वीकेंड से एक्सपेक्ट कर रहे हैं कि अगले हफ्ते से मज़ीद जो है ना 2-3 दिन का एक स्पेल होगा जो मुल्क के बालाई इलाकों पर बारिश का सबब बनेगा.
Now, fears are mounting about what happens next. Even if the emergency cools, people will be particularly vulnerable to catching life-threatening diseases. This is a country that lives bailout to survive. An extreme disaster like this flood can wreak havoc in Pakistan, leaving people to cope with the long-term consequences of it. While experts partially blame the climate crisis for the devastating floods, they also say that the Pakistan government is at fault. Its lack of urban planning and preparedness leaves people even more vulnerable year after year. So as people struggle to survive the deluge, they ask, how many floods will it take for change to sweep through Pakistan?
London is a busy host nowadays. They welcome 2 leaders in 2 weeks. First, French President Emmanuel Macron, then German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. The symbolism itself was quite significant. Britain left the European Union in 2020. The plan was to chart its own future in the world, not to hitch itself to Brussels. But more than 5 years later, is London having second thoughts? Are they regretting Brexit? Well, the visiting leaders are. Both Macron and Merz had the same thing to say.
To my personal deep and lasting regret, the United Kingdom has left the European Union.
First of all, of course, because the sovereign British people choose to leave the European Union in 2016, a decision that we respect, even if we found it deeply regrettable.
What about the other side? Does Prime Minister Keir Starmer also regret it? During the referendum, he was against leaving the EU, so personally, maybe he does regret it. In May this year, Starmer struck a deal with Brussels, a deal to reset ties with the European Union. Some parts of that deal tried to undo the Brexit damage. It gave Britain access to European markets, it resumed student exchange programs, it also eased up travel. The idea was to allow Britons to use European e-gates at airports. These are usually meant for EU members, but the UK is getting access to it now. Of course, this comes at a cost. Reports say the UK will have to contribute to the EU budget. It's not clear how much, but they'll have to pay the EU's food and emissions bodies, which makes you wonder what has changed. Trade is opening up, travel barriers are being taken out, London is still paying money to Brussels. So are we seeing a reverse Brexit? Starmer was asked this question a few months back. Listen to his response.
On the question of rejoining the EU, that isn't going to happen. That question was answered when we had a referendum in the UK some years ago. So that's settled. But I do think that we can have a better, closer relationship when it comes to trade and security.
So Starmer says Britain will not rejoin the EU, but he wants closer ties, very close ties. He has signed a new agreement with Germany. It's their first major bilateral deal since the Second World War. It's called the Kensington Treaty. And what does it do? The treaty calls for jointly combating illegal migration. It opens up German e-gates to UK passport holders. It sets up a direct train from London to Berlin. It also deepens military cooperation, especially joint manufacturing of weapons. Last week, Starmer signed a deal with Macron as well. That deal calls for nuclear sharing. France and the UK are Europe's only nuclear powers. They agreed to coordinate their nuclear responses, basically use their nukes jointly to defend Europe. None of this sounds Brexity. It sounds like London is moving closer to Brussels. The question is why? There are four main factors. Number one, Brexit was conjured up by the British right. The Labour Party was lukewarm towards the idea. Like I said, Starmer himself was against it. So it's natural for that pro-EU tilt to now reveal itself. That's one factor. Factor number two, Russia's war on Ukraine. Europe is paranoid about Moscow's intentions. They feel that Vladimir Putin will not stop at Ukraine, that he will march deeper into Europe. Many in Britain share that fear. They feel a stronger Europe is necessary to tackle Moscow, to contain the threat from the east. Next is factor number three, Donald Trump's pivot from Europe. He is playing fast and loose with NATO commitments. He's slapping tariffs on European allies. He's also accusing them of freeloading. This gives European countries very little wiggle room, and Britain even less so. At least the EU countries can band up in Brussels. Where will Britain turn to? If the EU and the US turn inward, Britain will be stuck in the middle, a physical and political island. Which brings us to the fourth and the final factor. British leaders royally messed up Brexit negotiations. To be fair, it was very complicated. They were undoing years of integration and cooperation, but the fact is they messed it up. Whether it was trade rules or fishing rules or travel rules. There was a lot of ambiguity and concerns, which obviously soured the people against Brexit. Just look at the recent polls. 55% Britons support rejoining the EU. Only 34% oppose it. Across the channel, it's the same sentiment. 63% Germans would welcome Britain back. So would 60% Spaniards, 53% in France, and 51% in Italy. Unfortunately for them, this is not a playground. You can't just keep hopping in and out. After Brexit, London had grand dreams about becoming a world power, of rediscovering their lost mojo. 5 years later, they're knocking at the door in Brussels, not for entry, but for friendship. Vantage continues after a short break.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
और आज उसकी सफलता पूरी दुनिया देख रही है। साथियों, बिहार के पास न सामर्थ्य की कमी है और न ही संसाधन की। आज बिहार के संसाधन बिहार की प्रगति का माध्यम बन रहे हैं। आप देखिए, एनडीए सरकार के प्रयासों के बाद से ही मखाना की कीमतें कितनी बढ़ी हैं, क्योंकि हमने यहां के मखाना किसानों को बड़े बाजार से जोड़ा। हम मखाना बोर्ड का गठन कर रहे हैं। यहां केला, लीची, मरचा चावल, कटारनी चावल, जर्दालू आम, मगही पान, अभी ऐसे कितने ही उत्पाद और हैं जो बिहार के किसानों को, बिहार के युवाओं को दुनिया भर के मार्केट से जोड़ेंगे। भाइयों बहनों, किसानों के उत्पाद और उनकी आय को बढ़ाना हमारी प्राथमिकता है। पीएम किसान सम्मान निधि योजना के तहत अब तक करीब 3.5 लाख करोड़ रुपया किसानों को दिए गए हैं। यहां अकेले मोतीहारी में ही 5 लाख से ज्यादा किसानों को 1,500 करोड़ रुपए से ज्यादा मिले हैं। साथियों, न हम नारों तक अटकते हैं, न हम वादों तक सिमटते हैं, हम तो काम करके दिखाते हैं। जब हम कहते हैं कि हम पिछड़ों, अति पिछड़ों के लिए निरंतर काम कर रहे हैं, तो ये हमारी नीतियों में भी, निर्णयों में भी नजर आता है। एनडीए सरकार का तो मिशन ही है हर पिछड़े को प्राथमिकता, हर पिछड़े को प्राथमिकता, चाहे पिछड़ा क्षेत्र हो या पिछड़ा वर्ग हो, हमारी सरकार की वो पहली प्राथमिकता है। दशकों तक
What happens when a country wants to deport someone, but their home country doesn't want to take them back? Well, they are sent to a third country, like the small African nation of Eswatini. This week, 5 convicted criminals were quietly flown out of the United States. They landed in Eswatini. It's a country ruled by a monarch. He lives in palaces while his people live in poverty. And now Eswatini is housing men the US calls depraved monsters. So how did this country become the latest pawn in America's deportation diplomacy? Which other countries have tried it? And is it even legal? Our next report tells you.
5 men, convicted criminals, according to US authorities, were recently flown out of America. But they did not land in their home countries. They landed here, in the landlocked African monarchy of Eswatini. It's roughly the size of New Jersey. It is ruled by King Mswati III, who lives lavishly while more than half his population lives on under $4 a day. But now, Eswatini is also a holding cell for what the US Department of Homeland Security called depraved monsters. The 5 deportees are originally from Jamaica, Yemen, Cuba, Laos, and Vietnam. So why send them to Eswatini? You see, deportation is a two-way street. One country wants to boot someone out, and the other has to be willing to take them back. But some of these home countries, particularly when it comes to serious criminals, just won't cooperate. So, the US got creative. And by creative, we mean ethically grey. Eswatini was the latest in a growing list of third-party countries willing to accept migrants or deportees not originally from their territory. This isn't a new idea. Countries have tried it before, and most of these arrangements sparked public fury and legal battles. But is it allowed under international law? That's the billion-dollar legal question. According to international refugee law, no person should be sent to a place where they could face danger, persecution, or degrading treatment. The catch is, this usually applies to asylum seekers. When it comes to convicted criminals or rejected migrants, legal protections are murkier. There's no international law that explicitly bans third-country deportations. So, many countries have tried it. The UK tried sending asylum seekers to Rwanda. British courts halted it, calling Rwanda unsafe and raising fears of torture or mistreatment. The backlash was huge. Australia first began using offshore detention centres in 2001. They were in Nauru and Papua New Guinea. At least 13 people died. The policy cost billions and left asylum seekers stranded for years. So, is Eswatini even equipped to hold these men? The 5 deportees are being kept in solitary confinement. The exact location of their imprisonment remains a state secret. But Eswatini's civil society groups are pushing back against this. They argue the country's prisons are already overcrowded, under-resourced, and offer 1 meal a day to inmates. So Eswatini people are asking, why is the regime